I'm Becca.
And I'm Ceci. Welcome to What If You Knew, the Red Flag series,
where we teach you how to avoid getting stuck in toxic relationships and what you need to know to be the kind of person who attracts the kind of person you want to be with.
In Red Flags 3, we discussed why people manipulate. Today, we're going to show you what happens to a person when they stay in a relationship with a person who manipulates.
Okay, do you remember what your turf is? Your turf is you. And only you. It's your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, and the right to make choices for yourself.
Most of us have been in a relationship with someone who didn't understand turf. Maybe that person was us.
So what happens to you if you stay in a relationship like that?
When you stay in a relationship with turf problems, one of two things will happen. You'll either choose to resist because someone's stepping on your turf, which means there'll be a lot of friction in that relationship, or you choose not to resist and end up with depression because not defending our turf leads to depression.
When someone thinks they have the right to tell you how you should be feeling or thinking or acting, they're stepping on your turf. And when someone steps on your turf, you instinctively, automatically get defensive.
That's right. It's a natural human reaction.
And you can feel it when someone gets defensive. Sometimes it's a little more subtle than others, but we can sense when it happens.
And even though it's human instinct to defend it, some people don't.
The instinct in those people to defend their turf has been turned off.
So how does this happen and why does it happen?
Shutting down instinct is a process. It's called depression, and it happens gradually. Let's walk through the stages of that process. We begin our lives with a strong sense of worth. Subconsciously, we believe in ourselves. We aren't afraid or embarrassed to try new things when we're little. We aren't worried about failing. We get up every single time we fall. And we have this desire, this tenacity to keep trying and keep learning.
There are 8 stages of depression. Ken and Sharon Patey, who wrote Growth Climate, The Anatomy of Relationships, do an excellent job of teaching this in depth. They call it the depression path closed down sequence. So here we are with this incredible worth and we start bumping into obstacles. We get this feeling like maybe not. Maybe I'm not worth as much as I thought I was or as much as other people are. That's the first stage of depression.
That thing we bump into, that obstacle we hit, is our turf getting stepped on.
Give us some examples, Becca.
Okay, someone questions our intelligence, like someone calls us a name or says something that makes us feel stupid. Or when someone's impatient with us, we get the unspoken message that we're not good at stuff. Or we might hear comments about our appearance from people. So we start worrying about that. They're all like these tiny little invasions on our turf.
Questioning our worth feels like this. Is there something wrong with me? I keep feeling like people have these expectations I'm not living up to. Feels like I'm always disappointing someone.
Think of relationships as a series of interactions with messages sent back and forth between people. Because our brains want to make sense of what we're experiencing, we take those messages and we make them mean something about us. Every little message we get from every little interaction is like a puzzle piece. We take all those pieces and we start putting them together.
As we keep adding piece after piece, we start to form this big picture, which becomes our reality. Sometimes we interpret those verbal and nonverbal messages we get correctly, but because sometimes we interpret them incorrectly, our perception of reality ends up being skewed.
That's really important to know, Ceci. Everyone does not have the same reality. We all have our own perceptions of reality.
And everyone walking around with their own perceptions makes life really interesting. For instance, let's say while we're growing up, we have a close relationship with an expressive person who is also very anxious. Since expressive people think out loud, we grow up hearing a constant flow of their anxious thoughts all day long. We might jump to the conclusion that we're the reason that person is always stressed or anxious, even if it has nothing to do with us. When that conclusion stays with us, and if it's not corrected, it skews our reality.
Keeping that in mind, let's move on to the second stage of depression. During this stage, we begin doubting our gut. Some people call it their instinct, their intuition, or like a sixth sense. It goes by a lot of different names. But whatever you call it, it's knowing deep inside, without having to be told by anyone else, what is right for you and what is not good for you. This sense of right and wrong is something we all have.
Questioning what we feel like might sound like this. I'm not sure I can trust my feelings anymore. People don't seem happy with my choices. I keep feeling like I'm getting in trouble when I don't do things their way.
If we doubt long enough, we'll eventually and mistakenly decide that we really cannot trust what we feel. That's the third stage of depression.
When we're young, we have the capacity to learn a lot very quickly. We can spend all of that energy focusing on creating and learning and growing. But if we feel like we have to spend it figuring out what's going to make other people happy, that slows or stops our growth.
It feels like this. Things go better if I ignore my stupid thoughts and just go along with what other people think. Things are easier that way. People seem happier with me.
Our goal in this stage is to do whatever we have to survive emotionally and sometimes physically. We get way less friction when we turn off our thinking and just do what other people want us to do. In a way, keeping them happy helps keep us safe. It's a way to survive an unhealthy relationship, but it's a temporary solution. So as adults, we need to learn how to recognize and avoid getting into these kinds of relationships.
There's something crucial we should point out here. Even if we decide that we shouldn't trust what we feel anymore, our instinct will never turn off. We can ignore it, we can bury it, we can cover it up to survive if we need to, but it never dies. But because it never completely turns off, we can reconnect with it as soon as we learn how to recognize and correct those misperceptions we have of reality. We'll tell you how you can do that in Red Flag 6.
Next is stage 4, where we've decided it's not emotionally safe for us to make decisions anymore. So we give that right to someone else. Becca, let's play this out. If someone else chooses for you and it doesn't go well, how do you feel?
I don't feel responsible because I wasn't the one that made the decision, so I can just blame it on them.
And if they make a decision for you that does go well?
Well, it doesn't feel good because I can't take the credit for it. All it does is reinforce in my mind that other people are better at making decisions for me than I am. And I start thinking maybe they're worth more than me. So I become more and more dependent on them.
Okay, now let's assume that you're in a healthy relationship where when people mess up, there's no blaming or shaming, and it's safe to take responsibility for whatever happens when you make a decision. Then how do you feel after making a choice, whether it works out or not?
Well, if it works, I feel great. My confidence grows. And if it doesn't work out, I still feel good because I'm learning how to handle things. I'm learning how to figure things out. And being independent feels awesome, right? There's no reason to question my worth.
When we told you back in Red Flags 1 to choose a partner who knows everyone can change when we realize we can improve, this is why.
We need the room in our relationships to mess up, to learn from it, and then change without someone always telling us what they think we need to change.
And if it's not us who's doing the changing, if it's someone else trying to change us, that's manipulation. All of those things we talked about in Red Flags 2.
And what we're talking about right now, this depression process, is the result of that. People not feeling safe to choose for themselves.
And it causes all these things: anxiety, depression, frustration, hurt, anger, fear, a feeling of being completely overwhelmed sometimes, and even panic.
The thoughts in your head might sound like this: I can't do anything right. I always screw everything up. What's the point of trying? I never know what to do or say. I'd better ask someone else. Even when it's obvious that we've succeeded at something, at this point, we won't take credit for it because we think that the only reason anything ever works out is because of someone else, not us. We literally don't see our own talents and strengths and accomplishments, and no amount of other people trying to point it out to us will change that view.
Now we hit stage 5. When someone is letting someone else make choices for them, there eventually comes a point when they find themselves in a compromising situation.
Explain what you mean, Ceci.
Well, that instinct of our worth that's connected to our sense of right and wrong, it's still alive in us, right? So if we suddenly find ourselves in a situation where we know we would usually do the right thing, but we think someone else wants us to do the opposite, we may end up doing something we regret because we're used to giving other people the right to decide for us.
Exactly. It has to do with boundaries. We think we know where our boundaries are, but we're in the habit of letting other people kind of drive us, so it gets harder and harder to stand our ground. If another person keeps pushing our boundaries, if they're relentless about it and we cave, we can get a strong sense of guilt when we fall into whatever we're falling into: shoplifting, drugs, sex, any number of things.
And there's that manipulation again. It's that relentless pushing from the other person. Here are some other tactics they might use. If you really loved me, you would do this for me. After all I've done for you, the least you could do is this. You sound like my mom. We can do whatever we want. What I'm asking you to do is no big deal. Maybe this relationship just isn't going to work out.
And the results of caving or breaking our own rules might sound like this: what's the use? I've already gone against what I've been taught. Why try? God's already mad at me anyway. It's too late for me. I have to put up with the way they treat me because no one else will ever want me. It's all my fault.
Before we go on with stage 6, one more quick flashback to Red Flags 1, where we learned that worth never changes.
That can't be said enough, and we can't forget it. Worth doesn't change. Our worth is not connected to our behavior. And right here, the devastation that comes from thinking that it is connected becomes painfully clear.
At stage 6, we believe that our needs do not matter. We're spending all of our energy serving the other person, taking no time for ourselves, just giving and giving and giving, trying to keep them happy, and we still feel worthless. Why? It's because doing all the nice things in the world and serving them perfectly, it's all behavior. The ugly truth is that if we're playing by the rule that behavior is connected to worth, we will never be happy because that rule is not based on reality. It only benefits the other person and their preferences.
We are working so hard at this point for acceptance that never comes. There might be moments when we think the other person sees our worth, but they aren't seeing our worth. They're seeing our value to them.
Becca, let's clarify that for everyone so we don't confuse the words worth and value. We keep saying that our worth can't change, but our value to another person can change because value is connected to our behavior. It can go up or down depending on how happy they are with us. And that's not true about worth.
When we believe that someone else's worth is greater than ours, it sounds like this: I should stop complaining and focus more on what they need. A good partner sacrifices everything for the person they love, right? Not true. A good partner might sacrifice for their partner, but not at the expense of their own well-being. And in a healthy relationship, the other person is doing the same thing.
At this stage, you might be asking yourself, why would anyone want to be with me? The sad answer to that question is the lower we believe our worth is, the more valuable we are to toxic people. They will value us for our ability to please them. And if we've been in a long-term relationship like this, we've probably gotten really good at doing that. But we're being used, and our true worth will not be appreciated.
If we know our worth, we can have zero value to someone else and totally be okay. Someone else's estimation of our value doesn't weigh into how we feel about ourselves. That's just their opinion based on how happy our behavior is currently making them. All right, that's okay. We don't have to spend time in a relationship with that person. Left unchecked, stage 6 turns into stage 7, where we truly believe no one cares about us. By this stage, our psychological and physical health are in jeopardy.
Here, we escape the pain by retreating into our minds. We're numb and emotionally disconnected. We're going through the motions of life, feeling totally insignificant to others.
We start to wonder if the only way to stop the pain is to leave, to get out and away from our environment. And some people do that. Kids run away, adults quit jobs, they move to a new city or a house, they get divorced, or they get into new relationships. But remember, our reality can be skewed, and it might only be our perception that we feel like nothing we do will ever be enough, and that people only hang around us when they feel obligated to. But whether it's real or perceived, the pain of rejection becomes more than we can bear, and we lose hope that anything will ever change.
When we feel like we can't take it anymore and decide we are done, we move into stage 8.
We're convinced that even if we left our toxic environment, nothing would change. And because it's so unbearable, we come to the conclusion that the only true escape is death.
It feels like this. No one would even notice if I wasn't here. No one cares about me. I'm just a burden. Nothing will ever change. I wish I'd never been born. I'd be doing everyone a favor if I was gone. This is when a person decides on a permanent escape.
Now we know that learning about all of this can be really emotional. It's hard for us to talk about it too. Our hearts go out to anyone who has been down this path or knows someone who has. But there's good news. Hope is never lost. All of this is reversible.
That's right. There is a way back. And once you learn how to identify the pieces of your puzzle that don't belong, the return trip is much faster and easier than you'd expect. We'll share with you how to do that in Red Flag 6.
But for now, when it comes to relationships, remember that you can know what to look for and you can know what you're looking at.
Next time, we'll tell you the few things you can do when you're interacting with your partner that will guarantee you'll be 100% okay, no matter what the other person does.
In fact, if you do these things in every interaction with every person in every relationship you have, you'll be manipulation proof and toxic proof.
Thanks for joining us.